Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video, and today I'm doing a review of the behemoth of a box set that is the Legacy of Time, which is just that, a behemoth of a release that's celebrating 20 years of Doctor Who on audio, on Big Finish audio, if you can believe it. Now, I've only been collecting since about 2014, so probably a lot of this went over my head, but even so, I think it's just a phenomenal release and love letter to Doctor Who just in general, really. First off, I'll be going through obviously the packaging and that. I'm assuming, or I'm under the assumption, firstly, another thing to take into consideration, I will obviously be going through spoilers, so if you want to go into this release completely unspoiled about anything, then obviously don't watch this review. But also, a lot of the stories are about sort of just short of or over or around an hour long, so as well, if I don't sound like I'm actually going as in depth as you might actually expect, then that'll be why, as well as Naturally, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but then me reviewing this means that I am actually going to be talking over some stuff, and that. But yeah, or at least, yeah, from what I remember of the stories, even if I'm rating them highly, I've listened to a lot of them sort of sporadically, with like little gaps here and there, but and that because there's so much to listen to. Of this recording, haven't listened to the behind the scenes either, which hopefully will be just as phenomenal as all of the stories and that. But yeah, so in terms of the packaging, you've got Tom Baker, Pete Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann credited at the top. You've got BBC, the new Doctor Who logo, which oddly enough in this box set looks stunning and works really well. Legacy of Time. Then you've got the 5th, 6th, 8th, 4th and 7th Doctors and that, as well as the 3rd Doctor down there, played by Tim Treloar, who doesn't get credited on the top, which is a bit of a shame, really. An epic 6-hour adventure celebrating 20 years of Doctor Who on audio from the Big Finish production. Big Finish We Love Stories, and then just this gorgeous, designed, almost, I know a lot of people said on the official trailer for this, this is like the Doctor Who Infinity War, basically, Infinity War for Doctor Who fans and nerds, and yeah, and this as poster would be amazing, and that as well on a personal level, this is the first sort of Big Finish audio special edition that I've ever got in my collection as well, so which is kind of ironic and kind of funny that I've always wanted one, but I've just never got one, and then yeah, this is the first one that I pick up, so it's quite a special one for that reason, because as I say, it's one of a kind in my collection. Then on the spine you've got the TARDIS, and you've got the Doctor Who logo, Legacy of Time, Big Finish We Love Stories. On the back you've got Doctor Who Legacy of Time, time is collapsing, and then you've got a bit of a synopsis there. You've got all these cogs, and then you've got the TARDIS and this sort of Roman numerals thing as well. And then you've got the list of the stories: Lies in Ruins by James Goss, Split Infinity by John Dorney, Sacrifice of Joe Grant by Guy Adams, Relic of Time by Matt Fitton, The Avenues of Possibility by Jonathan Morris, and Collision Course by Guy Adams. Lucky Guy Adams getting to write the episodes. Limited special edition includes bonus behind the scenes stuff, and then you've also got the limited number, which mine is 1285 of 4000. Awesome stuff. Yeah, I'm under the assumption you can only get this if you buy the limited edition, there's no standard edition, which sounds kind of peculiar, but I have the light at the end, the 50th anniversary Big Finish audio, but the standard edition, whereas I know one person that I know who has the limited edition as well, has that. So this is just a cardboard sleeve and that, so that's cool. Fortunately as well, I do actually have space for this as well in my collection, which was good. Then you've got all the credits for each of the stories, which is just insane. Then you've got an amazing sort of photo gallery of the different companions and doctors and whatnot. Then on the other side you've got the synopsis for each of the stories. Now I went into this kind of knowing vaguely about each of the stories because of the fact that I had that Jon Pertwee issue of, or Jon Pertwee was on the cover at least, of Doctor Who magazine, and they were previewing the stories there. Although between that and then actually getting the box set, I'd completely kind of forgot already what the stories were anyway. But yeah, I'll kind of get into that more later. That'll play into one of the some of the review, and then you just have this gorgeous designed sort of fold out thing of all the different ones with the different TARDISes and that. Which I know someone was complaining online on Facebook about the fact that the TARDISes, some of the discs are blue and some of them are red, and it's like, Jesus Christ, guys, chill out. Some people seriously will just complain about anything. And that, I guess. But yeah, phenomenal just stuff, really. Just really awesome way of celebrating 20 years of audio goodness. And yeah, even though I've been collecting since 2014, I just don't feel like I've even got that much early in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, and then on the opposite side from this was the back, this was actually the front when you take it out. Oh well, I have it that way, but I mean, I guess you could have it that way in the box as well, I guess. But anyway, Doctor Who, The Legacy of Time, and then you have the TARDIS, you have this massive, sort of thing that kind of reminds me of the Series 8 title sequence, with the Roman numerals and the sort of cogs and Gallifrey stuff. Then you've got Disc 1, Disc 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and what they have on them and that. And then you have the same sort of stuff on the spine as you did before. And yeah, that's all of the packaging and that it comes in. Oh, that's everything for the packaging even. So yeah, from what I remember, Lies in Ruins, the first story, I think off the top of my head, my main only real criticism off the top of my head was that I would have really liked it maybe earlier in the series or of stories, maybe even as the second or third story. It was very sort of, for me personally, a bit full on. A listen and that. I mean, I kind of expect that. I did somewhat expect it in so much as obviously is, celebrating 20 years of something, so there is that sort of expectation on the consumer from the people producing it that, you know your shit, as it were. Like how if you watched the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, you'd be expected to know quite a bit of the classic series, if not a lot, but or the new series and stuff. So I kind of get that. But what I mean is actually, Lies in Ruins actually, what I love about it is that it doesn't do a Stephen Moffat in so much as it doesn't, sort of tear down the mythology or Gallifreyan mythology. It adds to it, and really overall this set just sort of pushes the boundaries, or pushes the Doctor, pushes him against the wall, and that, or puts his back. He has his back put against the wall, or up against the wall even, or whatever, and that really sort of leads to some interesting things. And I really enjoyed Professor Bernie Summerfield, and that, a character that I'd never even experienced in Big Finish, because I don't have any of the Unbound series with David Warner, or any of the Virginia Adventure books or anything like that, but I get why she was in the first story, because she is their sort of first thing they ever did sort of stories for before getting the license in 1999 for Doctor Who. So I get that. I love the fact that even though her and River Song are both archaeologists, they are different enough, different enough just about, but what really sets them apart is the fact that they're both from different times in the Doctor's timeline, and the Eighth Doctor is at such a sort of shitty time in the Time War. So I think if you're a huge fan of the Eighth Doctor and the Time War, which I am, this is a brilliant sort of story for you, as well as stories that add to the mythology, as I say, of Gallifrey and that. It was a little bit difficult to listen to, but not because the audio quality was bad. Obviously, for the 20th anniversary release, the audio quality is absolutely, top notch, 10 out of 10. If I couldn't understand something, it wasn't because of the acting or the sound design. Acting, is 10 out of 10 from pretty much most of the cast, if not all. Likewise with the sound design, it's 10 out of 10. It's just phenomenal. They've completely just sort of refined their craft, really, and that it almost sounds like the actors and actresses are in the room with you, and Lies in Ruins felt very atmospheric, and as I say, McGann is given quite a bit of stuff to sort of mull over, and that, he has quite a lot to sink his teeth into, even, and there's a very melancholy thing that happens towards sort of the latter endish or partway through the story. And as I say, what I really like about Bernie Summerfield and River Song, played by Alex Kingston, they both know the Doctor, but one knows the Doctor before the Time War and the other knows the Doctor sort of after the Time War, so it really is interesting. So whether you're a classic series fan or a new series fan, there's probably one of those two characters you could connect with. And then the Doctor's sort of in the middle, in the mix of obviously being on the verge and or leading up towards the sort of Time War and that. So and being very hesitant as to wanting to partake in that sort of part of his very dark history and or future even, because in this box set time is very much fucked and or gone completely awry. Yeah, that reminds me, Alex Kingston as Professor Riversong, wonderful, really good. Honestly, I wish she'd been in some more of the stories. It's the first ever time I've experienced Alex Kingston's Riversong in any audio set. I've experienced her, all of the Doctor Who stories she's been in the new series, but I've never experienced her in Big Finish, and she was phenomenal and really good, and that. The dynamic between her and Professor Bernie Summerfield is almost that of like a sort of a multi-Doctor story. That kind of grated on me, I guess, as well. And as I say, there was quite a few plot twists. Some worked, some didn't. But overall, I'd give Lies in Ruins a 9.5 out of 10. A 9.5 out of 10. Moving on to the second story, Split Infinity. The irony is that it was probably the story that had intrigued me the most in terms of the sort of premise, but unfortunately was the one that had sort of fallen flat the most, and that, I mean, I'm gonna be honest as well, like, with this, I don't feel like anyone can be, overall, with this set, if people are critical of certain stories, more than likely it'll either be because they don't like the companion or that certain writer's writing style, or like or that certain Doctor, it'll all be subjective, basically. More than any release, this will be subjective, in so much as I would hope all the Doctor Who fans are unanimous in terms of the acting quality and, as I say, the sound design and that, but it is the Doctor Who community, and so who knows at this point where their collective heads are at. Bit of a rant there, but Split Infinity, as I say, I had a lot of high hopes for this one, and I really sort of dug the vibes and all the sort of premise and that of the 1960s and 1970s being collided, and the Seventh Doctor. He's one of my favourite Doctors of the 1980s, at least on the TV show. And that on audio, I'd probably actually say I prefer Colin Baker's Doctor, but Ace is wicked and awesome and that. But honestly, Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred in that story felt very much like sort of sidelined and very much pushed to the back. Now, Split Infinity could have been not that great for me personally because I was listening on the hottest day of the year. But yeah, I mean, I followed it up to about halfway and then just sort of started tapering off for me, and that the countermeasure team is pretty good and that, but I think maybe the fact that I don't have any affinity with them in terms of I haven't listened to their audio spin-offy series. I don't know if they've been in any actual Doctor Who audio-y things as well. I think there is some monthly range stories therein. There's some characters called the Rocket Men, which might be a reference to an older Big Finish audio story. There's these mob-type characters and mobstery type characters and that. There's a mention of Unit, which I loved, and that. There's quite a few characters in Split Infinity, whereas Lies in Ruins I felt like there was less. And that Lies in Ruins kind of felt like a big epic. Split Infinity kind of feels like almost a Third Doctor spy espionage story, but with the Seventh Doctor, but it just not being as good. It kind of feels like Inferno meets sort of Remembrance of the Daleks. But yeah, I've encountered the countermeasures team in Remembrance of the Daleks in the Titan comics that I think Andrew Cartmel wrote, Seventh Doctor ones and that. So I have an understanding of the characters. It's just there was something off about them in that release, and it was cool how they tried to juggle the different time periods and all the two 60s and 70s, and then having Sylvester in the future and then Sophie in the past, or vice versa, and that being a way of knowing when the scenes were switching over, and that was quite clever. But overall, Split Infinity, I'd give a 7 out of 10. Unfortunately, it was the one of the weaker ones in the series of episodes. Almost did feel like a big story arc, sort of big series, almost new series-esque, this release. Sacrifice of Joe Grant is the third story by the first one was by James Goss, then John Dorney. Guy Adams is up next, who he has the luxury of writing 2 stories, and that, if I'm not mistaken. And the Sacrifice of Joe Grant, I absolutely adored this one. It has Kate Stewart, it has Osgood, it has Katie Manning, who, I'll be honest, I'm indifferent on in terms of actual TV show. Like, sometimes I really like her in certain stories because she's actually doing quite a bit of stuff. In others, I feel like she's not being given as much. But I think that was literally what she once said behind the scenes in a thing. She was like, it was up to the writers and directors. I could give 110%, but it was up to them whether or not they'd actually give my character stuff to do. And this one is a love letter to that sort of era of the show, the Unit family, and that I think they are very much understanding that there is a big sort of love and appreciation within the Doctor Who community for that era. You only have to look at, like, say, Pertwee Smith 11 and other people on Facebook and Twitter, and just generally there is a lot of interest for that era, and it just doesn't get as much sort of stuff covered over it, or like a spotlight on it maybe even, and that I love the scenes with Joe Grant and the Third Doctor in the pub. Tim Treloar, first time ever heard him on audio, as well as Kate Stewart and Osgood, and that. But firstly, Tim Treloar was awesome as the Third Doctor, and that he really was good. I loved him in the role. He sold it for me, and that, the story kind of feels like what is it? The sort of series 2 finale almost, but with like but a classic series version of that, because it's set on a beach. There's like a weird time rift type thing, and Kate and Joe end up going into the past where the Doctor is almost, and that. It's kind of quite a bit action packed because there's some action stuff with Unit, and there's a lovely scene with Kate Stewart and her talking to her dad, which I might as well. I'm gonna go back to Lies in Ruins. Quickly, I was almost in tears with the first story, as well as almost in tears with Sacrifice of Joe Grant, as well as I might add, as I say, that phone call and just some of the other scenes. It was lovely that Joe got this sort of letter, and again, it kind of reminded me as well of like the fourth series of the new series of although she doesn't get to have the best happy ending, she still gets to kind of have a letter from the Doctor and that, and it's just weird. It's like the third Doctor seems the most responsible of all the Doctors, and most in control and most calm, and yet sort of regal and elegant and that, and stern and quite, but with a bit of a oomph to him, bit of a kick, and that Osgood was awesome in this as well, like her sort of use and integration in the story. And as I say, the unit soldiers were cool. One of them were voiced by Nicholas Briggs, which is awesome. Probably kind of deserves to be someone other than a Dalek, I guess. Overall, Sacrifice of Joe Grant, I gave a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed that story. It was, it had like time riff type things, I think, from what I remember, as a lot of the stories do, as obviously a lot of the stories are to do with time, because it's in the title. Moving on, Relative Time, which might be called Relative Time because it's to do with some relatives. It stars Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor and George Tennant as Jenny, which is awesome. Father and daughter at last get to meet. And the bad guy is the Nine. It's revealed where they are, which is a place that's actually in a Stephen Moffat story, which I thought the integration of that was awesome. And that, I think, as I say, I think this is just actually the misconception of this release. I get the feeling will be that it's just very much a love letter of just the audios, but actually I think it's a love letter of all of Doctor Who. Old, new, and the audios all together. Really trying to sort of bridge the gap. I think because again, like the setting of where they was a new series thing. And a pacing, and some of the newer characters, like some of the companions were of new series, like Jenny, like River, like Osgood and Kate Stewart. Kate Stewart was really good in the previous story. Anyway, Relative Time. The Nine was so. It kind of just felt like kind of crowbarred in there, and that it was good. It was all right. I like the interactions between Peter and Peter Davison and his daughter and that, and she was really nice and youthful and a go-getter sort of thing, and that. I think she was giving the best performance she has so far, I think. But then, to be fair, I didn't reckon much to the Jenny box as it were. Peter Davison, I've only got 1 monthly range release from him thus far, and I think he was good in this. Yeah, he was, giving it his all, I think. But he was sort of out of breath a lot of the time, and quite, sort of annoyed at Jenny a lot of the time. But it's just a character trait of his incarnation that always gets on my nerves a little bit. But yeah, then there were some bad guys and all creatures that I feel like were in an Eighth Doctor Adventure episode, like sort of dinosaur creatures, but for the life of me I can't remember what they're called, which is not helpful. But yeah, Relative Time, overall I gave that one an 8 out of 10. So near the lower end of the pile, unfortunately. But I guess I gave it a bit of a bit of a higher rating than Split Infinity, because although I like the Seventh Doctor more and Ace a lot more, the relative time was just an easier fun listen, whereas Split Infinity, it felt like a bit more like work, and then I kind of got bored, and that unfortunately. The Avenues of Possibility, the second to last story with Colin Baker and India Fisher as Charlie Pollard. She was alright, but she didn't have much to do. Colin was Colin, he was firing on all cylinders. They met like the original dude who set up the Metropolitan Police. Awesome concept, really cool sort of concept of this alternative 1950s England and that. Spoiler alert. And these different time sort of corridors, I'm just going to call them. I know that wasn't what they said in the story. And there's a sort of bad guy that gets revealed that is very key to the whole Big Finish back catalogue, is all I'll say. And that, what else can I say? Some decent supporting cast characters and that. Just trying. It was a bit difficult, but it was still enjoyable enough that I gave it a higher rating than some of the other ones. I gave it a 9 out of 10, and that there was a bit of back and forth of sorts. There was a little bit of humour and that, and stuff and that, and there was a redemption sort of thing for a side character, which I quite liked actually, and that, and yeah, it was a decent story. I enjoyed it, I think, more than I expected I would, but yeah. Yeah, the last story, Collision Course, which I've only just listened to, I really enjoyed it. It felt like Split Infinity, but on a smaller scale and kind of better done. And I'm not just saying that because it has my favourite Doctor, which is Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor, as well as Leela and Romana, which was awesome, and it kind of go back and forth between, the Fourth Doctor being with either companion and then what else? And then, him realising that he'd been this place, and the plot reveal of where they were and what had happened on this planet and stuff was awesome, and that, and it, yeah, I'm just surprised they didn't add like a connective tissue to the first story, honestly, and that was a bit of a missed opportunity there. I think the multi-Doctor sort of, all the Doctors being in the story could have happened a bit sooner maybe as well. So there were little minor criticisms here and there and that, but with Tom there is quite a lot of humour as well. I thought he brought, probably Collision Course oddly has the most humour, but then that's to kind of be expected because it's a multi-Doctor story as well as having Tom, so even before all the other Doctors come into play and sort of, make the story even more hectically bonkers, you've already got sort of a manic, sort of mischievous Doctor as it is, and that, yeah, it was a fun, easy listen, and it was epic. It was, there was obviously fan service there, which, some fans hate because, some fans hate fun, but yeah, then there was even, this is a little bit of a spoiler, and one of the Doctors who was in this story was sort of spoilt for me because I accidentally went on Facebook and sort of saw it. But basically, they introduced some 3 Doctors that aren't credited in that on the release, and I think that's why they did it, so that no one could leak that, beforehand, and that if you got your copy before anyone else and that, or in the mail and whatnot. So that was awesome. The banter and the dialogue and that was just, pure hilarity and that. And Professor Bernie Summerfield comes back and that again makes sense and that. And again, I just feel like it could have been cool if you had a little bit more interactions, I guess, with the different Doctors and that. It was awesome that they almost tried to kill off my favourite Doctor in that, with a Thanos snap almost. And what really made me choke up a little bit, with the Tom Bakery one was just because, he's my favourite Doctor. He's, as an actor and a person, actually quite old. And that kind of got me a bit more, and the fact that I didn't expect it and that. But yeah, so as I say, they really do push it. And then, as I say, the just sort of story idea was very creative, and then the bad guys were kind of easily defeated and that kind of felt... It was a bit of abrupt conclusion and or way they beat the bad guys, but I think maybe some of these might, it has highs and it has some lows, but the highs and the lows aren't that big, really, if that makes sense. Like, the highs are pretty high, but the lows aren't that low, I don't think. But basically, it's just little tweaks and little niggles that I have personally, but that's just me. I mean, I'm saying this as though I could, produce something as well, to this high standard and quality, which I can't. But yeah, basically I'd give Collision Course a 10 out of 10. It's really fun. It was easy enough to listen to. Tom's on top form. Leela and Romana, Louise Jameson and Lala Ward, and what else? All the other Doctors and that. And there was something else I was going to say. Yeah, forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, just a bit more connective tissue to the first story, because first two stories kind of feel very similar-ish, and that, somewhat. I wonder if there's a reason for that, I don't know. But yeah, I really did enjoy listening to a lot of these stories, for the most part, even. And, yeah, I've only just started realising this, but it's kind of funny how a lot of the companions for this release, even though they don't have the female Doctor, a lot of the companions sort of make up for that. A lot of them are the female characters, but then again, a lot of the characters in Doctor Who, I guess, other than the Doctor for the longest time, have been female. But yeah, so overall, I gave this release a 52.5, or 52.5 out of 60 overall points that it could have, gained or whatever, because, 10 times 6 is 60. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Please do comment, rate, and subscribe.